Picture the scene. It's July 19th, 2026. You're inside a completely packed, absolutely roaring MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. The first ever 48-team FIFA World Cup has finally reached its climax. But as Spain and Argentina step out onto that pitch, the tension hanging in the air, it isn't just about hoisting that iconic golden trophy. The stakes are actually much, much higher. Welcome to this explainer, where we're breaking down a clash of absolute monumental proportions in the football universe.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because subconsciously, every single player, every pundit, and definitely every voting journalist knows exactly what this matchup truly means. Whether it takes 90 minutes or 120 minutes if the football gods decide we need some extra drama, the final whistle of this massive tournament is going to serve as the absolute, undeniable decree for the 2026 Ballon d'Or. We aren't just crowning a world champion today. We are crowning the king of football.
All right, part one, the World Cup multiplier.
To really understand why this specific summer tournament holds so much ridiculous power, we have to look at the rulebook. Think of a grueling 9-month European club campaign as establishing a player's baseline. It proves you're elite. But a summer international tournament, that is the ultimate tiebreaker. See, back in 2022, France football fundamentally shifted the Ballon d'Or criteria. They moved away from the traditional calendar year to strictly evaluating players based on the European seasonal calendar. And because of that shift, summer tournaments now absorb just an incredible amount of narrative weight. I mean, you could score 40 goals in your domestic league, right? But a single game-winning goal in the World Cup knockout stages carries exponentially more emotional capital for the voters.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the historical precedent, because in a World Cup year, international destiny almost always completely overshadows domestic excellence. Just think back for a second. In 1998, Zinedine Zidane basically cemented his win exclusively with that 2-goal performance in the final against Brazil. In 2018, Luka Modric broke a decade-long Messi-Ronaldo duopoly just by carrying Croatia to the final. And of course, in 2023, Lionel Messi secured his 8th Ballon d'Or purely due to that magical Qatar run, which completely eclipsed Erling Haaland's historic club treble. Whoever survives this expanded 104-match marathon in 2026 is naturally going to inherit that exact same pole position.
Moving on to Section 2, a clash of generations.
This final is basically being framed as a heavyweight title fight. It's the ultimate generational head-to-head. On one side, obviously, we have Lionel Messi. The guy's 39 years old, and what he is doing simply defies athletic logic at this point. He's chasing an impossible record 9th Ballon d'Or and his 4th consecutive major international title. Just look at his absolute masterclass in the semifinal against England. After trailing early on, Messi just single-handedly engineered the comeback. He provided a pinpoint assist to Enzo Fernandez and then threaded this impossible defense-splitting pass for Lautaro Martinez's late winner. He's evolved into this untouchable, all-knowing playmaker.
But then, you look at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, and we have Lamine Yamal, a 19-year-old prodigy who just completely suffocated France's defense in Spain's 2-0 semifinal win. Fresh off his transformative Euro 2024 campaign, this kid represents the absolute fastest breakthrough to elite status in modern football history. Yamal manipulates space with this jaw-dropping maturity. Throughout this entire tournament, he's boasted elite expected assists, successful dribbles, and progressive carries.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic out on the pitch. When you actually break down the numbers, you see exactly how tightly bound the single match is to the individual prize. Prediction platforms currently have Messi as the frontrunner, sitting at a 31.7% probability of winning the Ballon d'Or. His trigger? Securing that massive international quadruple and completing the ultimate fairy tale ending. But Yamal sits right behind him as a very strong second. His trigger is entirely different. It's about shifting the era of football completely by winning the ultimate prize as a teenager. Their roles in this tournament contrast perfectly, which sets up a literal direct shootout for the journalist's favor.
Which brings us to Section 3, the collateral damage.
Of course, the definitive nature of a World Cup final doesn't just crown a winner, right? It actively eliminates the rest of the field. Before June, this Ballon d'Or race was wide open. But what about the rest of Europe's elite? The individual stat monsters and the continental heroes who absolutely dominated the 2025-2026 club season. Well, the harsh reality is that this grueling 48-team tournament has essentially dashed their hopes, completely locking them out of the ultimate prize.
Take Kylian Mbappe and Harry Kane, for example. Both of these guys had spectacular domestic campaigns, but their individual stocks completely tanked in the semifinals. Mbappe failed to score, and France exited without their usual explosive spark against Spain. And Kane? I mean, despite a really valiant tournament, his dream was crushed when England blew that 2-1 lead to Argentina. Through the sheer brutal process of elimination, both of these absolute superstars are now stranded on the outside looking in.
Let's move over to the Paris Saint-Germain contingent for a second to really see how this builds the case for our two finalists. Ousmane Dembélé, who is the reigning 2025 Ballon d'Or holder, let's not forget, and his teammate Vitinha. They just won back-to-back Champions Leagues. They capped it off with that breathless penalty shootout against Arsenal. Massive, massive club achievements. But they lack that sustained international brilliance this summer. Unless voters drastically change their habits and suddenly decide to prioritize club football over the World Cup, which history tells us they absolutely will not do, these continental heroes are realistically only going to be rounding out the top 5.
All right, Section 4, Crowning the Next King.
So, it all comes back to MetLife Stadium. The final whistle in New Jersey is what will ultimately dictate the journalists' votes. So the crucial point is how the voting panel actually approaches their ballots. They're guided by 3 distinct France football pillars. Number 1, individual performance and decisive character. Number 2, team achievements. And number 3, class and fair play. A World Cup final is this totally unique crucible because it perfectly synthesizes those first 2 pillars under literally the most intense pressure imaginable, with 82,500 fans in the stands watching your every single move.
If we want to ground this incredible emotional narrative in some objective data, just consider the Opta supercomputer win probabilities for the match itself. The margins are razor thin. Spain's structural efficiency actually has them favored at 45.1% in regulation time. Meanwhile, Argentina's sheer resilience sits at 29.4% with a solid 25.5% chance we see this thing go to a nail-biting draw in extra time.
But here's the thing you always have to remember. Voters are human. And human beings are incredibly prone to recency bias. This is the last major football match of the seasonal calendar. The defining mental image that the media machine takes away from this specific game is what's going to decide the vote. If Messi steps up and scores a trademark free kick to win it, the narrative of the greatest ever finishing football is going to sweep the globe instantly. But if Yamal leaves a really experienced Argentine defense just chasing shadows all night, the world is going to eagerly pivot to crowning the brand new king of the sport.
And that leaves us with this final thrilling question to ponder as we count down to July 19. When that final whistle echoes through New Jersey, are we going to witness a beautiful passing of the torch to a teenager? Are we going to see the ultimate, unreachable peak of the greatest player to ever grace the pitch? As you watch the match, remember, every single pass, every tackle, and every goal isn't just about the World Cup trophy. It is literally deciding who takes home the ultimate golden ball. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you next time.